Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give it just another minute for people to finish coming in, and then we'll get started. Just some quick housekeeping while we wait for people to join. Today's session will be recorded. We always get asked that, and you'll get a link to the replay by email after we wrap the session. If you have questions throughout the session today, please feel free to use the Q&A panel at any point. We will have a team member monitoring that throughout. So if you drop a question in there, we'll try to answer it directly in the Q&A box. So look out for a response there. And we'll also have a few minutes at the end to answer some of those questions live. We'll also have a couple of polls throughout the session today. So keep an eye out to respond when those pop up. All right, we're going to get into it. Today, we've got two speakers. Myself, I'm Jillian Clues, VP of Product Management here at Instinct Science. I have spent about 15 years in software and product management, and the last several years specifically focused on veterinary workflows, which means I and my team spend a lot of time thinking about where things slow down, where there's friction in practices, and what it would take to make things run more smoothly, which is really what we're here to talk about today. I'm also joined by one of our product managers, Kelly, who is going to introduce himself in a little bit. And here's what we're going to cover today. We'll start with a few minutes of background, what makes practices unique, what happens when software doesn't meet your practice where it is, leading into a live demo and Kelly talking about some of the use cases that we have been solving for with automations. And then, like I mentioned, we'll close with some Q&A. Before we get into that, a quick poll to just level set on where the audience is today in terms of automation. So how would you describe where you're at with that today? Maybe you have just appointment reminders. Maybe you're entirely manual today. Maybe you've automated a few things, but there's still a lot of manual gaps. Go ahead and answer that. And in a few moments, we'll take a look at where we stand as a group. I'm very curious to see where the room is. We talk to practices every day and the range really varies. Automation is also one of those words like integration that can mean a lot of different things to different people. So for some of you, maybe that just means appointment reminders. Others, maybe you have a whole operational layer that's automated. And some might still be running on people's memory and good intentions. And all those are valid starting points for the session today. And hopefully we can help regardless of where you're at on that journey. Okay, looking at the results here. It looks like we've got a pretty good split. Sounds like a majority of folks by a small margin are slightly automated, but there's still a lot of manual gaps in your workflows today. That's a very common answer that we see, and I think you'll like some of what we're going to show today. So I want to start with something that everybody I think here already knows, which is that no two practices run in identical ways. We talk to hospitals every day, and while there are common patterns, especially across similar practice types, there are also things that make every single practice unique, and that's ultimately what differentiates you from the practice down the street. There are, of course, major variations by practice type. A general practice really lives and dies by its schedule. Your clients are known, visit types are predictable, and consistency in client experience across every visit is what builds a relationship over time. An ER looks completely different. You've got unpredictable volume, clients arriving in crisis, and there's no margin for setup time and manual tasks. You have to go right into triage. The moment a pet is on the way in, that clock's already running. And then specialty is something else entirely. You've got multiple providers in the loop, a referring vet who needs to stay informed and hand off across a care team that can span facilities. And that's just a whole different order of complexity. And in a lot of cases, your team has just made it work with the software that you have, even when it doesn't mirror your workflows directly. You've built rhythms. They know, this appointment time needs this type of follow-up. This patient flag needs to be set before discharge. This callback for this type of visit needs to happen 24 hours later. They filled those gaps where the software has fallen short and created consistency where systems never accounted for how you actually operate. So the problem here isn't effort. It's that none of it lives in the system where the work is actually happening. It lives in your people. That CSR who always catches a missed charge, the tech who remembers to send the pre-op instructions, the person who notices a patient was just marked deceased and makes sure that a sympathy card goes out before that moment passes. Your people are really that load-bearing infrastructure, but that human vigilance isn't a scalable system. And what's at stake when that system breaks down are really critical things, right? You've got revenue on the line, missed charges that are only getting captured when somebody catches them. If your exam charge for a specific appointment type only makes it onto the invoice because someone remembered to add it, those things fall through the cracks. Every shift where that person isn't there is one where there's missed revenue opportunity. Your client experience, those touch points that build client loyalty, the follow-up call after a sick visit, the check-in after a procedure, the sympathy card, those are all moments that determine whether a client comes back. And right now, too often, they happen when somebody remembers. And then after hours work is really the cumulative burden of all this. It's not one big thing. It's a minute here, 2 minutes there, a task that should have been created automatically but wasn't. And by the end of a shift, those minutes turn into hours, and a lot of times that turns into after hours work. In most practice, software is built around kind of a generic version of a veterinary practice. It's one size fits all. It's just what happens when you are trying to build software at scale. You build for sort of the average, and you assume practices will adapt. But what if software worked the other way? What if instead of adapting to the way that the software works and filling in its gaps, you could define the way that your practice operates and then let the software run within that? Not just a reminder system, but the actual operational logic of your practice. Who gets notified when, what happens when a procedure is marked complete, what fires the moment a patient is on the way, built into the system, running every time, regardless of who's working. So that you're no longer relying on human vigilance. So that's what Kelly's going to show today, and I'll let Kelly introduce himself and take it away.
Thank you, Jillian. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly. I'm Senior Product Manager here at Instinct. My team and I built Instinct's automations platform. I'm going to talk a little bit about automations and what they actually look like in a veterinary hospital setting. I'll show you how to build a simple automation in Instinct, and then I'll walk you through a few workflow examples that hospital can automate with the platform. One thing that we hear constantly from hospital is that their workflows depend on people remembering things, remembering callbacks, remembering follow-ups, remembering charges, which documents to create, or remembering who still needs communications. And the reality is, as we've heard, that you can all make it work, and great teams do, but it's exhausting. And this is where our automations comes in. Most people hear the word automation, and generally they understand the idea. But it really looks like inside of a veterinary hospital workflow is where it becomes more real. At a high level, automations in Instinct let hospitals define rules based on the way that they already work. So example would be when something happens in a system, like an appointment gets booked or a patient gets discharged, a procedure is completed or lab results comes in, Instinct can automatically perform the next steps. So our goal here is simple: remove all these repetitive tasks from your day-to-day so the teams can spend more time on patient care and client experience. So why did we build this? We built this because no two practices operate the same way. Every practice has different workflows, different handoffs, and different operational pain points. But one thing that we saw consistently was teams relying on the memory and manual follow-ups to keep the hospital running smoothly. We wanted hospitals to be able to shape the software around the way that they already work instead of forcing their workflows into a one-size-fits-all system. Let me show you a simple example of this in practice. I'm gonna share my screen. In this scenario, we're going to automate a chart document creation based on a very common reason for visit, which is vomiting and diarrhea. Instead of relying someone to remember which chart documents to create, which SOAP document to create, we can configure in Instinct to automatically prepare all of this proper documentation as soon as patient checks in. All right, so here we are. We're gonna give it a short description. Create chart documents when patient is presented with vomiting and diarrhea as a reason for visit. Each automation starts with a trigger. This trigger is when patient checks in and the condition, the visit reason, contains any of the possible variation of how our CSR can document visit for reason. You get the idea. Then we're going to create documents from template. The first one will be some triage notes. We'll show you the preview of the document. And we're not going to create just one. We're going to create multiple. We're going to create some SOAP document I should have prepared here. And we're also going to create a discharge document related to vomiting and diarrhea. So how it reads here, when patient checks in and the reason for visit for this patient includes any of these, then the system will automatically create all of these documents without anybody remembering and manually adding these documents. I'm gonna activate this automation, save it, and now let's find Fluffy. We're going to check Fluffy in. So the Fluffy shows up. It's an outpatient reason for visit. One of those that we service will be internal medicine, just admin work. The best doctor we currently have on staff will take care of it. And Fluffy is just above 12 kilograms. We check in Fluffy, we go into their visit, and we see that the visit was created with all of those prepared documents right away without anybody remembering and looking what is Fluffy presented with and what are the documents that we will need for his visit. I'm gonna stop sharing. And this is just one example of many workflows hospital can automate and streamline with our platform. I'm going to quickly walk you through a couple of the examples. I grouped them by hospital roles and workflows. So for front desk and CSR teams, it's all about reducing manual follow-up and helping the team to stay responsive during their busy shift. Callback task written. Instead of manually tracking callbacks after specific visits or patient events, Instinct can automatically create follow-up tasks for the team, so nothing falls through the cracks. Sympathy card reminder is another one. Automations can also help teams deliver more consistent client care by creating reminders for important follow-ups, like sending sympathy card after a patient loss. Missed appointment follow-up, common scenario, right? When a client no-shows or cancels late, the system can automatically send a follow-up message. It's either email or text to encourage rescheduling and help recover lost appointment opportunities. Walk-in check-in workflow, another simple one that we hear so often about. Front desk and CSR teams, they all live off of the calendar. So for scenarios like a walk-in or emergency arrivals, there's no booked appointment. So rather than leaving the gap in the calendar or manually creating this appointment, Instinct can create this visit appointment as soon as patient checks in. Let's look at some of the workflows to help veterinarians. Main problem diagnosis update. After completed procedure, Instinct can automatically update a patient's main problem diagnosis list. So again, you don't have to remember to keep important patient info updated. The next one is around diagnostic results follow-up. With intelligent workflows, Instinct can summarize diagnostic results, flag any abnormalities, and help prioritize follow-up for ordering or attending veterinarian. Chart document automations, we looked at that one. Another example is standard appointment charge capture. This one is about making sure that routine charges don't get missed. Imagine a patient books an appointment and comes in for their visit, and at a check-in, the system can automatically add the standard charge to the invoice based on the appointment type. So nobody has to remember or accidentally forgetting it. Procedure completion. Oh, I missed the patient alert automation. This one is about making sure that, this one is still for veterinary technician, making sure that surfacing the right patient information at the right time is the key for technician. So instead of manually adding or updating alerts for the patient, the system automatically creates these patient alerts based on reason for visit, medications, different procedures that were done or diagnosis, or even patient risk factors. Procedure completion workflow. So this one is really about making sure that all of the patient information can stay automatically updated after different procedure takes place, like spaying and neutering. We can update the signalments for the patient. Or when the patient is, when the microchip is implanted, we can update the microchip information on the patient chart automatically. The same goes for the dental procedure completed. We can create a discharge task and send the detailed home care instructions to patient owner. The last one is for the hospital admins and finance teams. Automations can also help standardize collection workflows. So for AR follow-up automation, the system can automatically send overdue balance reminders based on configurable aging rules, include a payment link, and track all of this outreach in ComLog. Prepayment workflows are something we hear about constantly from the hospital. Instinct can help here too, to automate the process, but automatically sending deposit instructions to the patient owner and the payment link when specific appointment types are booked. So hopefully this gives you a feel how automations in Instinct can help take that manual work off of your team's plate across the entire hospital. And honestly, These are just a few examples. We're constantly continuing to build and expand our automations platform. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Jillian. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Awesome to see the breadth of the impact that automations can have. So often we see, just automations that support CSR workflows, but we've really been focused on building a layer that can support every role in your organization. Before we get into questions, we've got one more quick poll, just so that we can follow up with each of you based on what you're interested in. So please, if you want to learn more about any of our products, whether that's Instinct EMR and what you saw today with automations, treatment plan, standards of care, PLUMS, or ScribbleVet, or multiple, please let us know through that poll. Take a second for that. And that'll just help us make sure that we can follow up and connect you with the right people to continue the conversation. And while you're doing that, also feel free to drop in questions in the Q&A box if there's anything that Kelly and I can help answer today. And Kelly, while we're just letting folks answer that poll, some common questions that we get. One thing that I know people are always wondering, especially with automation tools like this, is just how does the setup process actually look? Is there a library of pre-built automations? Do you need to have technical background? Do you have to build everything from scratch? You want to talk through what that looks like?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, we were thinking about making this as easy and seamless for the admins as possible. So instead of you really thinking how to start with your first automation and what event to automate, we prepared a library of prepared templates that solve a problem. All you need to do to head over to our templates library and start there. The automation will be built for you. You just fill in the small little gaps that you need to fill out. So yeah, it should be as easy as 1, 2, 3, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Awesome. And I know we see, we have practices as customers that vary in practice type. We also have mixed practices. So where there's maybe general practice and urgent care under the same roof. How does that work in terms of setup? Can those have different workflows for different visit types?
Oh, absolutely. You saw in that little example that everything is basically around the trigger, conditions, and actions. And the conditions are really, really powerful because that's exactly where you can configure your exact workflow. So if the specialty is using certain workflow that they're targeting with automations, then the GP can use completely different automations that will only run for their specific workflow. No problem there.
Awesome. I see a couple people mentioning that they're having trouble with the poll, that they can only select one option. That's all right. We'll make sure that we follow up and talk to you about any of the products that you're interested in if there are multiple. We've got one question in the chat about whether there are specific automations for medical records for large or mixed animal practices. Kelly, thoughts on that?
We didn't have this use case just yet, but that doesn't mean that you're looking into it. There are specific automations for any medical records. There's no limitations based on about this one, though.
Yeah, so if you had a specific visit type for that and specific document types or charges that related to those types of appointments, you could absolutely have it set up a specific workflow for those. And Kelly, what about, we've seen great adoption across practices for automations. Where are we seeing most practices first adopt? Like, what use cases are resonating the most from what you've seen? Yeah,
when we first launched automations a few months back, we saw exactly what we were thinking or targeting, which is teams started offloading that mental heavy load of remembering and missing things. So we saw a lot of follow-up tasks. When something happened, follow up with the patient, follow up with the veterinarian. Don't let me remember things. Let the system do it for me. So this was pretty much 75% of all of the automations in the first 3 months were targeted towards these kinds of workflow. After that, we started increasing the amount of different workflows that practices can automate, going from what single thing I can automate and moving more towards what is the full workflow that can be automated from the check-in throughout the patient visit all the way to discharge and post-discharge. Good question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm seeing a couple of broader questions about Instinct in the Q&A as well. So I'll answer those to the best of my ability, but would definitely recommend connecting with our team as a follow-up to this webinar. Just generally about what Instinct is this a complete clinic program to schedule and book and keep all records? And yes, Instinct, we have a number of different products. You may be familiar with our treatment plan, which is what we first launched many years ago. But we have expanded really to be a full practice management system in EMR. So we have practices fully running on Instinct across emergency and specialty, as well as now GP. So you can schedule your appointments, you can send reminders, you can keep your medical records, you can run inpatient appointments and use the treatment sheet all through Instinct. And another great question that's automation specific, is there work list automation for tasks associated with an appointment, like an invoice being complete, a medical record being complete, payment received, et cetera? Kelly, I think that builds on top of what you were talking about automating various touch points through the patient life cycle.
Yeah, we have a very good question. Thank you. We have a list of all of the things that we currently are working on. And then we have a huge list of all of the other use cases that we're jumping on right away. So all of the mentioned triggers of, hey, let me automate something that starts with completion of a document. Maybe after a document, I want to create a new document. This is all coming up. So we have a really robust roadmap for the entire year that keeps us busy, my whole team, to work only on automations. So it's all coming.
Okay, and we'll wrap there. I know we're about at time. Thank you all for joining today. Hopefully you learned something helpful about automations. And if you're interested in connecting with Instinct, we'll follow up if you respond to that poll. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.